There's a number that determines whether you'll retire comfortably or work until you die, and you've probably never calculated it. Most people haven't. They just know something feels wrong. They're doing everything right, saving 10% of every paycheck, skipping the lattes everyone jokes about, using coupons, driving used cars, and somehow at the end of the year, the number in their savings account looks almost the same, maybe a little bigger, but not enough. Never enough. And here's the thing that nobody wants to say out loud. It's not your fault, but it's also not an accident. By the way, my name is Ben, and you're watching Ben Invests, where I share financial secrets and tricks for you guys. Let's talk about why saving money has become nearly impossible for an entire generation, and I don't mean hard. I mean structurally, mathematically rigged against you in ways that weren't true 40 years ago. The year is 1975. A guy named Richard works at a factory in Ohio, makes about $8 an hour. Not great, but livable. He rents a decent apartment for $120 a month. That's 15 hours of work. 15 hours to cover his housing for 30 days. He's got money left over, not a fortune, but enough to save a little, go out on weekends, buy a car without financing. His life isn't glamorous, but it's stable, predictable. He can plan. Now meet Sarah. Same job, adjusted for inflation in 2024. She makes the equivalent of Richard's wage. Maybe a bit more, she's lucky. Her rent? $1,500 a month. That's 175 hours of work for the same apartment. The same four walls. She's working nearly 12 times longer than Richard did just to keep a roof over her head. And we haven't even talked about her student loans yet, or her car payment, or the fact that her health insurance has a $6,000 deductible she'll probably never hit, but still has to budget around. Sarah isn't bad with money. She's fighting a system that's been fundamentally redesigned since Richard clocked in for his shift 50 years ago. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The advice you've been getting your entire life, the stuff about budgeting and discipline and cutting back on small luxuries, that advice assumes you're living in Richard's economy. You're not. Let's do the math. The actual math. Not the aspirational stuff in personal finance books. The median household income in the United States right now is about $75,000 a year. Sounds decent, right? Middle class? Comfortable. Now let's subtract. Federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, Medicare, you're down to around $58,000. That's what actually hits your bank account. $4,800 a month. Rent or mortgage for a median home? Let's be conservative. $1,800 a month. Utilities, another $200. Internet and phone, because you literally cannot function in modern society without them. $150. Car payment, because most of America doesn't have reliable public transit. $400. Car insurance. $150. Gas. $200. Health insurance premium, even with an employer contribution. $300. Groceries for a family. $700 if you're careful. We're at $3,900. And we haven't bought clothes, haven't fixed anything that breaks, haven't saved for retirement, haven't put money aside for emergencies, haven't paid off student loans, haven't taken a vacation or bought a birthday present or gone to the dentist. You got $500 left for everything else. And the advice is to save 20% of your income. That would be $15,000 a year. Based on these numbers, you'd need to save your entire discretionary budget for 2.5 years just to hit 1 year's worth of recommended savings. So when people say they can't save, they're not being dramatic, they're being accurate. But here's the part that makes this feel impossible instead of just hard. It's not static. Every single one of those costs is growing faster than wages, and it's been happening for decades. Between 1975 and now, productivity in America, the actual output per worker, has increased by 77%. 77% more value created per person. And wages, when adjusted for inflation, they've grown by 12%. Think about that gap. Workers are producing 6 times more value than the wage growth they've received. Where did that money go? It's not a mystery. Corporate profits as a share of GDP have nearly doubled. Executive compensation has skyrocketed. Shareholder returns have exploded. The money exists. It's just not trickling down to the people creating it. And housing? The thing that takes up the biggest chunk of everyone's budget? The median home price in 1975 was about $43,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's around $250,000 in today's dollars. The actual median home price right now? $417,000. It's not inflation, it's something else. Homes have become investment vehicles, assets for wealth accumulation. And when that happens, when housing stops being a place to live and starts being a way to get rich, the people who need homes to live in get priced out because you can't compete with hedge funds and foreign investors and Airbnb landlords paying cash over asking. You're not buying a home, you're bidding against someone's retirement portfolio. Student loans at another layer. The average graduate leaves school with $37,000 in debt. That's a car loan you didn't get a car for. It's a mortgage payment without the house. And unlike every other kind of debt, you can discharge it in bankruptcy. It follows you forever if necessary. Previous generations didn't deal with this. College was cheap, sometimes free. You could work part-time during the summer and cover your tuition. Now, 4 years at a public university costs over $100,000. Private schools closer to $300,000. And the return on investment keeps shrinking because the degree that used to guarantee a good job now qualifies you for an entry-level position that requires 3 years of experience. It's not that education isn't valuable. It's that the cost has decoupled from the outcome. And let's talk about healthcare, because this might be the most absurd piece of the puzzle. America spends more per capita on healthcare than any other developed nation, twice as much as countries with universal coverage. And for that premium price, you get a system where people ration their insulin, skip preventative care, and declare bankruptcy over medical bills at rates that don't exist anywhere else in the industrialized world. A broken arm costs $15,000, an appendectomy, $33,000. And those are the routine things, the boring emergencies. If you get really sick, if you need surgery or cancer treatment or long-term care, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even with insurance, the whole model is designed to extract maximum revenue at the moment of maximum vulnerability. You can't shop around when you're having a heart attack. You can't negotiate when your kid has 104-degree fever. So you pay whatever they charge, and then you spend years trying to recover financially from the experience of recovering physically. This is why medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in America. Not reckless spending, not bad decisions, getting sick. So let's take stock. Housing costs have doubled relative to income. Education costs have tripled. Healthcare costs are out of control. Wages have stagnated. And the advice is still to save more, spend less, be more disciplined. It's like telling someone to swim faster while adding weights to their ankles. But it gets worse. Because there's another force at work that nobody talks about. One that's even more insidious because it's invisible: inflation. Not the official number, the real one. The government calculates inflation using something called the Consumer Price Index. It's a basket of goods and services that's supposed to represent what average people buy. And according to that index, inflation has been pretty tame for the last 20 years. 2%, maybe 3% a year. But here's the trick. The basket keeps changing. When something gets too expensive, they swap it out for something cheaper. Steak gets replaced with chicken. Chicken gets replaced with beans. They call it substitution, a reasonable adjustment for changing consumer behavior. Except it's not tracking the cost of living, it's tracking the cost of surviving. If you measure inflation based on maintaining the same standard of living, not adjusting down every time something gets unaffordable, the real rate is closer to 7 or 8% a year. That means your money loses half its value every 9 years. You're not failing to save, you're losing purchasing power faster than you can accumulate it. And this is where the psychological part kicks in. Because you can feel it. You know something's wrong. You remember when a gallon of milk was $3 and now it's $5. When a movie ticket was $8 and now it's $17. When a used car was $5,000 and now it's $25. You're not imagining it, but everywhere you look, the message is the same. Budget better. Work harder. Stop buying avocado toast. It's gaslighting at scale. And the people giving that advice? They bought their homes in 1998. They graduated college with no debt. They had pensions. They're living in Richard's economy and giving advice to people in Sarah's. Here's the part that should make you angry. Not frustrated, angry. This wasn't inevitable. These aren't natural economic forces like gravity. They're choices. Policy decisions, things that could have been done differently. Wages didn't stagnate because of some immutable law of economics. They stagnated because labor unions were systematically dismantled, because minimum wage increases were blocked for decades, because corporate consolidation eliminated competition for workers. because stock buybacks and shareholder primacy became the only metrics that mattered. Housing didn't become unaffordable because we ran out of land. It became unaffordable because zoning laws restrict supply, because private equity firms bought up entire neighborhoods, because housing policy prioritized investment returns over accessibility, because NIMBYism blocked every attempt to build more units. Healthcare didn't become expensive because medicine got better. It became expensive because we're the only developed nation that lets pharmaceutical companies charge whatever they want, because hospital billing is deliberately opaque, because insurance companies profit from denying claims, because we treat healthcare as a commodity instead of a right. Student debt didn't explode because education suddenly became more valuable. It exploded because state funding for public universities collapsed, because loans became a profit center for the federal government, because colleges started competing on amenities instead of academics, because an entire generation was told that debt was an investment in their future while the ROI kept shrinking. Every single one of these problems has a policy solution. We just decided not to implement them, and instead we got told to budget better. Now here's where people usually get uncomfortable, because the natural question is, if the system is rigged, what do you do about it? And the answer is deeply unsatisfying. You do both things. You acknowledge the system is broken and you still make the best decisions you can within it. Because here's the trap. If you decide it's all hopeless and stop trying, you guarantee the worst outcome. But if you blame yourself for systemic problems, you internalize shame that doesn't belong to you and miss the bigger picture. You can save money and also advocate for higher wages. You can budget carefully and also support policy changes that make housing affordable. You can invest in your retirement and also recognize that most people won't be able to. These aren't contradictory positions. But let's be honest about what saving looks like now. It's not about building wealth. For most people, it's about building a cushion against disaster. It's defensive, not aspirational. You're not saving for a dream vacation. You're saving so that a car repair doesn't spiral into eviction. And even that modest goal requires near-perfect execution. No major health issues. No unexpected job loss, no family emergencies, no once-in-a-lifetime economic crashes that seem to happen every 7 years now. You need luck, and discipline, and a safety net. And even then, you might not make it. The math is just that brutal. There's a concept in economics called financialization. It's the process by which financial markets, institutions, and motives become increasingly dominant in the economy. And it's been accelerating for 40 years. Everything has become an asset class. Housing, education, healthcare, even your attention is monetized and traded on markets. And when everything is an investment, everything gets optimized for returns, which means everything gets more expensive for the people who actually need to use it. You don't live in a house. You occupy an appreciating asset. You don't get an education. You finance human capital development. You don't receive healthcare. You consume medical services. The language shift isn't accidental. It reflects a deeper change in how the economy functions and who it's designed to serve. And here's the uncomfortable truth. It's serving exactly who it's supposed to serve. It's not broken. It's working perfectly, just not for you. The people at the top, the ones who own the assets, the ones whose wealth comes from returns on capital rather than wages from labor, they've had the best 40 years in modern history. Wealth accumulation at the top has been extraordinary, record-breaking, unprecedented. So when you hear that the economy is doing great, that unemployment is low, that markets are hitting all-time highs, understand what that means. It means the economy is great for the people who own things. For everyone else, the economy is a place you work and spend and try not to drown. There's a statistic that haunts me. 63% of Americans couldn't cover a $500 emergency with savings. 63%! That's not the bottom 10% or the bottom 20%. That's nearly 2/3 of the country living on the edge of financial catastrophe every single day. And it's not because 2/3 of Americans are irresponsible. It's because the system has been drained of slack. There's no margin for error anymore. Everything costs too much, pays too little, and changes too fast. You're not supposed to be able to relax. You're supposed to be anxious, afraid, desperate enough to take whatever wage is offered, accept whatever conditions are imposed, tolerate whatever indignities are required to keep your head above water. That anxiety is a feature, not a bug. Because scared workers don't demand raises, they don't organize, they don't push back, they're grateful just to have a job. And if you can't save, if you can't build wealth, If you can't afford to take risks, you stay stuck, you stay dependent, you stay productive. So here's the question nobody wants to ask. What happens when an entire generation realizes they can't win this game? Not can't win easily, can't win at all, can't buy homes, can't retire, can't afford kids, can't get ahead no matter how hard they work or how smart they are or how many sacrifices they make. What happens when the contract breaks? The unspoken deal that said if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll be okay. When that stops being true, what comes next? We're starting to find out. Birth rates are collapsing because people can't afford children. Home ownership among young people is at historic lows. Retirement confidence is plummeting. Trust in institutions is cratering. And people are angry. Really angry. They just can't agree on who to be angry at. Some blame immigrants. Some blame migrants. Some blame the government. Some blame technology. And they're all kind of right and kind of wrong because the problem isn't one villain. It's a system that's been optimized for extraction rather than sustainability. And here's the deeply ironic part. The people who built the system, the policymakers and executives and investors, they thought they were being rational, maximizing efficiency, cutting waste, increasing returns. And they were. They successfully extracted every possible dollar from every possible source. But they forgot that an economy isn't a machine. It's an ecosystem. And if you drain an ecosystem of all its resources, it collapses, not slowly. Suddenly, we're watching it happen in real time. Consumer debt is at record highs. Credit card balances are exploding. Buy now, pay later schemes are everywhere because people need financing just to get through the month. Personal savings rates have dropped to historic lows, and every indicator that measures financial stability for regular people is flashing red. But the stock market is fine. Corporate profits are fine. Wealth at the top is fine, for now, because here's the thing about unsustainable systems. They feel stable right up until they don't, and then they collapse fast. Ask anyone who lived through 2008 or 2020 or any of the other economic crises that keep happening with increasing frequency. The system isn't broken, it's fragile. And fragile things shatter when stressed. So what do you do with this information? How do you live in an economy that's structurally hostile to your financial survival? You start by understanding the game, really understanding it. Not the fairy tale version where hard work equals success. The actual version where your labor is a cost to be minimized and your spending is a revenue stream to be maximized. Where the system needs you to consume but doesn't want you to accumulate. Where you're supposed to participate but not benefit. Once you see it clearly, you can make better decisions. Not perfect decisions, better ones. You save what you can even when it feels pointless. Because compound interest works both ways, and starting late means working forever. You invest in skills that are hard to automate and hard to offshore. You build networks and communities because systems fail but people endure. You stay mobile and adaptable because loyalty isn't rewarded anymore, and you stop blaming yourself for systemic failures. Because the hidden reason saving money feels impossible isn't because you're doing it wrong. It's because the math has been rewritten, the rules have changed, the game is rigged. And until enough people understand that, until enough people stop accepting blame for problems they didn't create, nothing changes. So here's your thought to sit with. If an economy requires that most people struggle just to survive, is it actually working? Or have we just convinced ourselves that suffering is normal? That anxiety is responsible, that exhaustion is virtue? Maybe the problem isn't that you can't save money. Maybe the problem is that we've built a system where saving money requires heroic effort instead of basic prudence. And maybe, just maybe, we should stop celebrating the people who make it and start questioning why it's so damn hard in the first place. But what do I know? I'm just a guy on YouTube talking about numbers. The question is, what are you going to do about it?